Hi guys, Nick here from Intuitive Tennis. This is video number 3 from the roll of the wrist series. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the roll of the wrist on the volley. Let's start off with the forehand volley. The most important thing on the forehand volley is to maintain an L shape when striking the ball. And we want to basically have the racket parallel to the net, because we're going to try to deflect the ball back over to the other side. And what needs to happen with the wrist is a wrist extension. Even if we take the racket back a little bit and lag, and you see a lot of great volleyers have a little bit of a backswing when they're trying to put a little bit more power on the volley. And now from this position, we're going to simply maintain this wrist extension. What I don't want to see is a straightening of the wrist into a neutral position, because we would experience a loss of control immediately if we did this on the volley. So the wrist is going to remain passive on the forehand volley, and wrist extension is very necessary. On the backhand volley, there's going to be a slight take back as well if we want to achieve a little bit more power. And in this case, we're dealing with a little bit of radial deviation as we take the racket to about the shoulder level. And now, as we go into the contact, we're going to go into a slight wrist extension, because we need to create stability at contact. Many recreational players, even juniors, will have an unstable backhand volley with the wrist kind of straightening out and collapsing. So there's a little bit of a tightening and a wrist extension necessary to create control at the contact point. What happens next depends on what kind of volley we're trying to accomplish. If we're just simply blocking the ball back, we're going to just maintain the slight wrist extension and a tightening of the grip. If we're trying to put side spin or maybe a little bit of an inside-out backhand volley, there might be some ulnar deviation involved as we drop the tip of the racket down, and there's a little bit of ulnar deviation happening here. If we are trying to create a little bit more of a put-away volley, we're going to lead with the elbow and go more across the body and keep the tip of the racket pointing to the side like this. And in this case, we're also dealing with slight wrist extension. So it's very important that we do not straighten the wrist as we hit a backhand volley, because we experience a loss of control, and we must slightly tighten the grip and have a slight extension of the wrist. Let's start off with the forehand volley. So wrist extension is very crucial when it comes to the forehand volley. And let me demonstrate a few forehand volleys. And basically, I'm trying to keep my wrist extended at contact and have as little wrist movement as possible. And in this case, I'm just basically blocking the ball back. And if I want to create a little bit more power, I might even lag the racket behind and then freeze it right at contact. In this case, we're still only dealing with wrist extension. Many recreational players will have an active wrist like this, and they will lose control of the ball almost immediately. So that's something you don't want to do. You want to tighten the wrist a little bit at contact and have very solid wrist extension. One exception where we could get a little wristy if we get a volley close to the net, and we might give a little bit a wrist movement like this. But this is an exception. I would say on the majority of the volleys, we're going to have that wrist as solid as possible. On the backhand volley, we again are dealing with slight wrist extension, not as much as the forehand volley, and maybe if we're trying to do specialty volleys, a slight ulnar deviation. So let me demonstrate a few backhand volleys. And again, we're trying to keep the wrist as firm as possible at contact so that we achieve as much control as possible. The across the body movement will help promote the controlling of the contact point by keeping the racket face parallel to the net as long as possible. I'm going to try a few volleys with side spin where we drop the racket head down, and there's a little bit of ulnar deviation involved there. I want a volley drop shot like this. Again, we're going to use a little bit more ulnar deviation. And now with the take back, if we're going for more aggressive volleys, we may be using a little bit of radial deviation and then wrist extension at contact. Tune in 2 weeks from now when I cover the final video of this series. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the roll of the wrist on the serve. As for now, I want to thank you for watching this video. Please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.